Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar from LASSIB. In the last webinar, we have covered Lean Six Sigma applied to rural market. You can view the recording of this webinar under lassib.org webinar section, which has been given by Mr. Siddharth Singh, who is the Director of Operations with LASSIB. And I am Varun Khare and I will be your host for this webinar. So today's webinar is on applying system thinking archetypes to process improvement framework, which will be given by Gurbans Chatwal, co-founder Mobilitas. I will give you the brief introduction about our presenter today in the later slides. Gurbans, can you change the slides? Now, we are very proud to say that in the just a span of 2 years, we have touched the lives of over 10,000 professionals from 40 plus countries. Gurbans, can you change the slide? Now, before we move on to the presentation, now I would like to take you some of the ground rules. The total duration of the webinar will be 45 minutes and the presentation duration will be of 30 minutes, in which question and answer session will be of 15 minutes. You can post your question on the webinar chat box. The video of this webinar will be available at the link which you can see on your screen, and links will also be mailed to you. Presentation of this webinar will be only available for download only for our professional members and corporate members only. In case of any problem, you can contact me. The details of the contact details of myself is there on your screen. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter of the day, Mr. Gurbans. Gurbans co-founded Mobilitas with an aspiration to create mobile application products that will have a significant social impact through sectors such as healthcare and education in India. Pursuing his passion to contribute to education, he also founded Saral School that focuses on enhancing interdisciplinary education in areas of mathematics, science and technology for middle and secondary school students. Before this, he worked for 10 years in Capgemini as a vice president for Capgemini India. Entrepreneur in nature, he has 21 years of industry and international experience and has lived, worked and traveled extensively in India, US and Europe. In his previous assignment, he was involved in teaching and research at University of Delhi and IT consulting with global IT companies. At work and home, Gurbans has lived on principle of human dignity, empowerment and growth. He reverse committed, creative and fun-loving people. Gurbans is a prolific reader, translating his learning and providing leadership to roll out organization-wide initiatives. He has a master's degree in business administration from IIT Delhi. His passion away from work includes photography and running. So now, without any further delay, I now hand over to Gurbans to start the webinar. Gurbans, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. And hello, everyone. Before I start, there are two things I would want you to know. Number one, because of a little technical issue, I cannot see the chat window while I'm presenting, so I would request Varun to prompt me whenever a question has been asked on the chat.
Sure.
And secondly, because of the Diwali function, which kind of stretches in India, which is a festival of lights, you would get sometimes a little disturbed by the firecrackers that go on in the background. So please bear with me on these two topics. So what we would do is we kind of move ahead and look at, how can what are system thinking archetypes and how can we apply and why should we apply them in the process improvement frameworks that are already available. I have, in my own career in the last 15 years, worked extensively with, frameworks such as the CMMI. I have worked with Six Sigma. I have worked with Lean. I was also introduced the Philip Crosby system for personal quality improvement. But then I felt that somewhere there are some aspects of the systems that we work with that we tend to miss out when we just apply these systems. So what I would want you to understand, and I would like you to introduce in the short time, is to give you a very, very basic idea on what system archetypes are, what systems thinking is about, and how we can start applying them in our day-to-day work, even as we work with other process improvement frameworks such as Six Sigma or Lean or so on. But before we go into that, let's kind of see what's happening around us. We know that things have been changing. Things have become more complex. We have many more man-made systems that we continuously interact with. The complexity does not only relate to the complexity of a system in itself. So, for example, the complexity is just not about how many components a system has. For example, if I'm taking, if I have to look at the number of combinations of, the pilots and the flights available and who I assign where, then even though there might be a huge number of combinations, but this is all about detail or combinatorial complexity. Something that we miss out from the complexity side is the dynamic complexity. And dynamic complexity can also exist in very simple systems. Systems that organize, systems that learn, systems that change over a period of time, and systems in which the subparts have very strong relationships to each other. That's where the dynamic complexity comes in, and we tend to kind of sometimes totally ignore that. We have also become so much more virtual in the way we work. We are so much more comfortable with teams distributed globally. And of course, as we realize that we have societies now, and we have teams now who are more impatient. Everything needs to be done so quickly. Time is so short with all of us, and we have been able to respond to some of these challenges, and we have not been able to respond to some of them. So, of course, we are much more comfortable with having more complex processes around us. We are more process-driven now because we live in societies which have very defined rules and regulations like do's and don'ts, what is good or not good. And we also live in an ecosystem which is more and more getting institutionalized. So this introduces us to more and more processes, and processes that kind of tend to become more and more complex. But on the same hand, our ability to comprehend complexity and the interrelationships that exist between systems still does not seem to be up to the mark. Our economic systems still fail because we do not know if I touch one part of a system, and because we are all globally connected with each other, if I touch one part of the system, how will it impact the other parts, and when will it impact them? So there is this space and time dimension that has come in, which has made things more complex for us. So even there was recently a proposal by Government of India that we should connect the rivers. Now, the contention is that our understanding as of today is so naive that we cannot comprehend that 50 years down the line, what would be the impact in nature because of connecting the river systems just to solve a flooding problem of today. So because things have become more complex, and part of it, there are two parts to this complexity. One part is because of the dynamic complexities, the relationship between the systems which have become global, which have become more intense. And the other part is that when something or when I intervene into a system to do something good, it could be what I feel is a solution to the problem as I see today. I fail to be able to predict what would be the outcome of what I'm doing today 20 years down the time, and how would this outcome manifest itself? Would it be close to, will I be able to see close to where I am intervening into the system, or would it happen somewhere else in a very different, or in a very different part of the world, or in a place which is very far away from where I am, and also in time which is like much further down, and therefore I'm not able to relate these two parts. So while we tend to live in more process-oriented environments, I think we fail to, as today, we fail to kind of comprehend and be able to kind of predict what my interventions could lead to down the line. So what are its implications? And we would look at its implications from a context of continuous improvement only, because that's the overall focus. Although systems archetypes can be applied to so many different problem areas, but we would kind of focus on continuous improvement only. So number one, we need a mindset which is very much tuned towards processes, because we are being driven to more process-oriented society. We need a mindset which is more tuned to recognizing patterns of behavior. We many a times tend to base our decisions and actions on isolated events, and we do not tend to map these isolated events over a time graph to see how the system is behaving over time. And we need a mindset which is tuned to just not looking at components in a system, but also looking at what is the relationship between the components of the system. So if we combine this together, where we are able to look at the processes, where we do not jump or take knee-jerk reactions based on isolated events, but are more focused on looking at behaviors over time graphs, and we are also very, very conscious about the relationships that exist, then I think we are moving towards a more systemic point of view. We are looking at activities, and we are looking at systems in a very holistic way, and this is where the systems viewpoint comes in. So we are not just looking at processes, we're not measuring processes at certain points in time and basing decisions on that, but we are moving from processes to patterns, and from patterns to relationships, and then bringing all these three together to be able to analyze why a problem exists, or why certain people behave in a certain way, or why certain organizations behave in a certain way, and then look at leverage points. Look at leverage points within the systems that I should go and intervene with, which would give me the maximum benefit, and which would allow me to tackle with the most difficult of the problems. And to visualize this, I think I would say it's kind of an imagery that stays in my mind is from the movie The Lion King. And the whole imagery of circle of life, and how Mufasa, the Lion King there, explains that how everything exists in nature in a delicate balance, and everything is connected, and therefore we need to respect all the creatures, from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope. In a very simple and in a beautiful way, the whole imagery of circle of life is kind of explained and brought into my imagery by this movie. And I think it's very, very beautifully explained and beautifully kind of picturized in that movie, that and the way that wisdom comes in through the Lion King, that how everything is interconnected, and how we sometimes don't see these interconnections, and we take decisions based on just looking at certain components in the system and forgetting about if I do something or if I intervene into that system, how it could impact all the connecting systems. I've been speaking for the last 10 minutes. I have not been able to see the chat messages, so kind of verifying with Varun, are there any questions at this point in time? Varun, do we have some questions at this point in time? I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear. Varun, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sorry, Varun, just wanted to check if there are any questions.
No. There are no questions at this point of time. But if there are any questions, I will interrupt you in the middle and I will pass it to you.
Okay, fine, thanks. So as I said, it is moving away from just looking at components and the process part to moving to patterns of behavior, to looking at patterns of behavior and to look at interrelationship between components that leads us to a systems view and an approach. Now, systems approach has its genesis in biology. And it's quite true because that's where you see, how things are connected with each other, your different organs, your different parts, body parts, how they kind of all interrelate with each other. And so the way systems approach can be understood is it's not about, there are two different viewpoints. You can have a reductionist view where you break everything and you analyze the smallest of components and you try to find a solution there. And the other approach is you take a holistic approach, you combine all the parts and then see how the system behaves with all its parts together, and you also look at the interrelationship between the components within the system. The second point is you need to be very clear and understand what is the overall objective or goal of a system. So a system can be a team, system can be an organization, a system can be a set of machines working together. So every system has a goal, and every system is constituted of smaller parts that all combine together to achieve the goal. And when we are looking at a systems point of view, it is we are acknowledging that there are parts and there are interrelationship between parts in the system. So these interrelationships are very important. And then there are, of course, there are a set of tools that allow us to address and analyze systems. And we would go ahead and we will look at just one of the tools, which is the system archetype. And we would look at system archetype in a very, very simple environment in terms of how it can be used. But there is so much of material which is available online that you can actually go and study more beyond that. But let's look at a system archetype which is founded with the help of feedback loops. So let's start by analyzing a system which is a sales-oriented system, and we are looking at a behavior over time graph which says that my sales are decreasing. Now, a natural reaction that an organization takes is because we have sales targets, the sales force or the sales people go out and they try to increase the number of accounts. So because they have to sell more, the sales are decreasing. So that's a natural reaction. We go out, increase the number of accounts or increase the sales because you got to meet your sales targets. And that seems to be a quick fix which has been taken into account without really looking at why this is happening. But what actually happens is that it is a service problems which are leading to reducing sales, where the customers are going back and not committing to more revenues for this company. So as I increase my sales effort and I bring in more accounts, my capacity to service those additional accounts is stretched, and I start creating more and more service problems, which kind of then goes back and influences to decreasing sales further on. So what you see here is that even though I might be taking a quick fix, which is I go and increase the sales efforts to get more accounts, there is a problem lurking somewhere else, which actually is influencing to bring the sales for that specific company down over a period of time. Now, there's one very important thing that we need to look at here, and which differentiates, and I wanted to bring this differentiator between how we typically look at when we are doing process analysis. One of the biggest differences is that when we are in a systems view, we never draw straight line graphs. Life is not a straight line, but it exists in circles. So when you're in a systems viewpoint, or when you're taking a systems approach to solving a problem, you would always draw feedback loops. Some people say, we call it, you start thinking in circles, because whatever you do has a reaction, there's a cause and an effect, and this cause and effect is not a straight line, because some of the effects that comes back to influence from where you started or to some other points in the value chain. So we always need to think in terms of circles. So wherever I go, if I see that an analysis has been done where the steps have been drawn 1 to 10, and this is a straight line, I know that something has been missed out, because it just cannot exist as a straight line, because whatever you do will come back and hit you back again, either positively or negatively. But you should be aware of that. And so you always have to think in terms of circles. So let's look at what's the archetype that is working here. And the archetype that is working here, we call it the consequences or the unintended consequences, the archetype of unintended consequences. So what happens in this archetype? And there are 7 or 8 very basic archetypes in systems viewpoint, and you can then create your own models of what's happening in your real environment based on these 7 or 8 archetypes. What we are doing here is just looking at one of the archetypes. So you start with a problem symptom, and you do the analysis there, and you find a fix which you think is a solution to that problem, and therefore you put the fix in place, and maybe over a short period of time you see the problem going away or the problem reducing, which looks great, and you think that we have found the solution and things are improving now. But after a delay, after a couple of months, so that is the time dimension, and there could be a space dimension to that, at some other place in the organization.
Hello, Gurbans, you there? Gurbans, we cannot hear you. Gurbans, you there?
This could be that I would want to put another fix around it. So I would introduce another quality control measure around it. I would tend to go and put, another layer of a proactive quality control measure, or a quality control which is, looking at the finished goods and rejecting or accepting them. So you put another layer there. So what's happening is that, because the fix is producing a consequence which is happening a couple of months down the line, or it is from where the fix has been put in place, it becomes very difficult to relate this unintended consequence to the fix that was identified. So we are never able to relate these unintended consequences to the fix and why the problem symptoms tend to come back again. And we say that, this is a typical problem. It does not go away. It keeps coming back again and again. And it tends to kind of create layers and layers of quality control and increase the cost of quality from that perspective. So next time when you're doing an analysis on defects and you're doing the process analysis and you find the solution, try to draw this diagram and try to think, if I put this solution in place, what could be the unintended consequences that could come up from at a different time or in different parts of the organization or different parts of the world. As of today, we do not even think in that direction, and we are not even able to relate when something comes back. We are not even able to relate that it is because of this weakness. So when you go back, we have just discussed one simple, a very, very simple mechanism on where a system archetype could be applied, and that is what we could do best in the 30-minute time that we have. But when you go back, here are some things that you should keep in mind. Number one, look at behavior over time graphs. Don't react to single isolated events. A single isolated event usually is never a problem. If it has happened for the first time, maybe you take some action to it, but there would be something below that layer. Or if you kind of see how this pattern appears over a period of time, it would give you a more systemic view into, or a more, as in the traditional quality we say, the root cause. It would give you a much better view into the root cause of where the problem lies. Second, just going back to the same fix and doing more of it does not help. So if there's a problem and you put a fix to it, the problem seems to be going down and then comes up again, and you put more of that fix, you bring more automation there, you put more people there for quality control, so it goes down and then starts coming up again. So if you see this oscillating movement, it means that there is some other unintended consequence which is not allowing the problem to be solved. So just by doing more on the fix side is not going to help. And third, he said, think in circles. Every cause and effect as it goes along actually comes back to impact the initial starting points or some point in between. So if you are doing a process analysis, if you're doing flowcharts or you're doing cross-functional diagrams, whatever, if there are no feedback loops, if there are no loops which come back from the final effect to some of the initial causes, then you have not done a complete thinking exercise. It exposes gaps in your thought process. So if you're not thinking in circles, you're not building feedback loops, you're missing something. And that is absolutely critical, that you do not just draw linear flowcharts. And how can you Of course, you would sometimes need some support. And one of the support is, of course, management wants everything quantified. Management wants things to be done immediately. You need to kind of push back because, number one, everything cannot be quantified. We sometimes go a little too far in trying to quantify benefits where the quantification is so far removed from what we're trying to measure that it does not kind of reflect the reality. Identify leverage points within the system. You need to know, as a system, if I'm in a team, if something is not going right, and what is it that I can do, or what is it that the team can do to improve it. We sometimes, blame external influences and things happening around us too many times. And work through. Right now we look at events. What I'm saying is move beyond events to patterns of behaviors so that you can see systemic structures, like you draw an archetype and see where the unintended consequences are. And this would help you to build better mental models about how things are organized around you and how things are behaving around you. So these are absolutely critical as you go along. And these would be the enabling factors to help you to do things differently. Thank you so much. I was allotted half an hour, so I'm done with my time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Back to Varun.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gurbans, for the wonderful and informative presentation today. Now we will now start the question and answer session. Just as a reminder, if you have any comments or questions regarding the information shared in the presentation, you can directly contact Mr. Gurbans anytime after this webinar. So, is anybody having any questions? Yeah, Gurbans, there is one question for you. Somebody is saying that we are thinking, because you have explained everything about the six system archetypes and how it helps in the project and how it helps in thinking of but they are expecting some example on this system thinking, how it can be applied to Lean Six Sigma projects. You can give an example on that?
So the question is how we can link this to a Lean Six Sigma project.
Right.
So what happens in a Lean or a Six Sigma project is, typically you have some form of defect which you are trying to reduce, which is classical Six Sigma. Or in a classical Lean environment, you're trying to simplify your work processes and trying to speed the throughput. Now, while you're doing the analysis in Six Sigma, you collect a lot of data around the process which is throwing up defects. So you measure the defects, you measure some process points, and then you try to do the root cause analysis. Now, till that point, everything is good. But what happens is that when I do a root cause analysis and I find my root cause and then I decide, what a solution I need to put in place, at that point in time, I do not think of what the unintended consequences can be. So I'm relating it directly to the systems archetype that we discussed. So once I have identified the solution, I do not go into a thinking exercise or in a brainstorming exercise with my team to look at, okay, this was the problem, this is the solution I found, so it should help to reduce the defects. But what are the other unintended consequences that can happen because of the solution that I'm putting in place? We do not give it a thought. So sitting with your team and looking at and thinking explicitly what other consequences that can happen because of this, will help you to bring out, will help you to kind of, sharpen your solution in a much better way. Secondly, when you put a fix and you see the problem improving, and then you find that after some time the defects again start going up, and then you again do a root cause analysis and find a fix, and then your defects start coming down, but after some time it again starts going up. So therefore sometimes you have these very difficult problems that just don't seem to go away. They seem to be improving for a short period of time, and then the problem starts improving again. If you see this behavior over time graph, if you plot these kind of defects over time, and you see that it's an oscillation that is happening, then you know that just doing the root cause analysis and finding a solution again is not going to help. What you have to then think at that point in time is, what are the other side effects happening in the organization which are not allowing me to take or tackle the problem permanently. So these are the two examples that I can think of where you would want to plug in your knowledge about a system archetype called unintended consequences. Number one, when you find a solution, think of what could be the other unintended consequences. So, and number two, if you have been trying to solve the problem and it keeps coming back again and again after a particular time, then try to find a fix. Don't try to kind of, make the fix more elaborate, or don't try to put layers and layers of quality control at the same place. Go back and look at, where else in the organization something is happening because of this, which is coming back and, creating the problem again.
Okay, Mohan, I think Mr. Gurbans has answered your question. Are you okay? Okay, thanks very much, Mohan. And thank Gurbans for answering his question. And now we want to let you know about the next webinar which is on business process re-engineering. It is on 13th December 2012, and the timing is 7:30 p.m. IST. For registration, you can directly mail me. The mail ID is there on your screen. So thank you, Gurbans, and thanks for the wonderful presentation. That's all the time we have for today's webinar. We look forward to hosting you at the next webinar. Thanks, Gurbans, and thanks all the attendees who have joined this webinar. Thank you very much. Look forward to see you in the next webinar. Thanks, Gurbans.